Ys Origin originally released back in 2006 in Japan and then saw a localization in 2012. It's been on Windows, the PS4, Vita, Xbox One, and now comes to the Nintendo Switch on October the 1st, acting as a prequel to the 6 titles that we'd seen before, and was set 700 years before the events of Ys 1. A big thanks to the publisher for the review copy, and I know there are many of us who absolutely love this series and didn't get a chance to play this one. Is it any good? Oh, that's my worst pun ever. Let's find out. The story centers around 3 main playable characters, 2 of whom are unlockable from the start of the game: Unisa Tova and Hugo Fact. While I could potentially spoil things if I tell you who the 3rd playable character is, I think I can get away with calling him just the Claw. And there may also be the surprise 4th edition Adol Kristin, who was added to the titles to be used in the time attack and arena modes. But each of those 3 main characters have their own story arcs, and that story centers around the Dharm Tower and the Black Pearl. The twin goddesses have gone missing shortly after demons attack the land of Ys, forcing everyone to ascend to the heavens on a floating temple, as you do, and sent by the 6 priests of the kingdom. It's your job as a group of 12 to enter the tower and try and track them down. Interestingly, and a piece of side history, this was the first Ys game in the series at the time in which Adol Kristin wasn't the main protagonist. There are lots of twists and turns as you make your way up the tower, both narratively speaking and literally, but I enjoyed the writing of the main characters and built up a real love-hate relationship with Hugo Fact, who is a pompous, self-righteous twit and has to learn the hard way who his friends are, whereas Unisa Tova is much more likable, if a little naive. In terms of story delivery, there are a few really nicely animated sequences as well as some narrated segments, and early impressions of the title gave me a few pangs of nostalgia for one of my favourite games, Breath of Fire 3. I'm not sure if it was the character models and the way they're placed upon an isometric 3D background or the writing itself, but I felt a connection to it. In terms of gameplay, things are quite different from some of the more modern Ys titles. This one is a full dungeon crawler with hack and slash gameplay. There are a number of different difficulty modes, with the final hardest one called Nightmare being absolutely brutal. Aside from the main story, there's a time attack mode which you'll unlock by completing the game with all of the main characters. It gives you time attack, arena mode, as well as a bonus shop where you can spend your SP. One button is your main attack, which has no stamina attached to it and can be used repeatedly, and you'll find a charge gauge gradually filling at the bottom of your screen. There are 3 main special abilities which will be unlocked as you progress through the title, and this was originally known as the tri-weapon system, and it's the last game to use it. Each character has their own abilities and skills, with one being a fighter with close range damage and the other being a ranged sorcerer. Each of them have their own unique abilities, such as Unisia's downward thrust or Hugo's power shot, and some of these offensive skills are also used to aid you in the platforming. For example, Hugo's shield, which for Unisia is the whirlwind move, briefly suspends you in the air and allows you to reach further platforms or glide down to hidden items. There's no map in the game, but it's not really required. There are a couple of moments where you had to use your lateral thinking skills and a few minor puzzles, but generally it's quite easy to know where to go. You'll unlock a few skills which allow you to progress into new areas a la a Metroidvania, but the vast majority of your time is going to be spent hacking and slashing your way through a multitude of enemies who will drop you different vials which increase your statistics. I always like a mechanic like this. It essentially allows for combo multipliers, so that if you can keep doing damage and moving forward at a fast pace, your stats and damage will be boosted accordingly. It's a useful system to assuage some of the potential repetition that naturally comes with the territory, and that's something that does arise, as every time you leave a screen and return, all the enemies will be respawned. As mentioned in the story segment, the aim of the game is to go up the tower one floor at a time. You'll have a crystal which allows for fast travel back to base, and from here you can upgrade your weapon using certain items. The final ability that both characters possess is achieved when you fill the specials gauge, and you can hit that X button and unleash hell. Hugo, who uses the Eyes of Fact weapon, will suddenly have double firepower, And while I liked playing as Hugo, it felt like you needed a button to keep him stationary. You could hold the right trigger, which would slow him down enough for you to be a bit more precise with your aiming, but one to keep him completely still would have made more sense with his moveset. Whereas Unicia, who's the hack and slash brawler, can just charge headlong in. You didn't need that functionality. Each of the special abilities that you have a secondary mode, which is accessed by holding down the button. This then uses a much more powerful form of it. There's quite a bit of platforming in Ys Origin, which will utilize your skills, and some segments whereby killing the flashing red enemies unlocks the next area or chest item. It's nothing overly complex, but there were a few interesting puzzles which weren't very well signposted to the player and could potentially leave for some frustrating moments. It wasn't that they were difficult, it's just that they weren't explained at all, and that goes for some of the mechanics in general. You'll have items sat in your inventory, not realizing that equipping them is an essential step for solving a certain problem. It's all very old school, and once I got into that mindset, it wasn't a problem at all, but it's something worth considering before you jump into the game, expecting all the quality of life improvements you're used to. One area of Ys Origins I absolutely loved were the boss fights. Not only did they not allow you to just walk in and wail on the boss to do damage, but they required some real thought from the player about what skills you'd unlocked since fighting the last one, as very often a combination of these abilities rather than your main attack will be essential for doing damage. One particularly nightmarish fight against a giant centipede creature is going to leave me with nightmares for quite some time. As you hack and slash your way through multitudes of demons, you'll gather quite a large amount of SP, which is shown down here. This can be used to purchase upgrades for your characters at the save crystals, with the best upgrades costing far more points and encouraging the player to stockpile these points. But you could argue that these point tiers were a touch too out of reach, but I'm guessing this is more aimed towards multiple playthroughs or playing through on the harder modes. Overall, I really enjoyed the gameplay of Ys Origin. It is very simplistic, but I was compelled to see the different story arcs, with the third mystery story arc doing a really good job of filling in some of the gaps in the lore. Once you've completed all three, as mentioned, you'll unlock that time attack mode and arena mode, which has a boss rush element to it as well, and all of a sudden you've got a global leaderboard in terms of the best times, which is always fun to participate in. There are a number of different outfit unlocks for all of the characters, and yeah, there's just more to this game than initially meets the eye. And if you start to head to some of those higher difficulty modes, it's a much more brutal and, for me, enjoyable experience. Just know before you buy this, it's a classic dungeon crawler. You're gonna get repetition. Overall for gameplay, I give it 16 out of 20. I just would have liked a few additions like the stationary shooting mode to make that ranged class a touch more enjoyable. Control score, 16 out of 20. In terms of visuals and performance, Ys Origins looks okay. A few of those nice story cutscenes are very low resolution. As I'm sure you'll all know, in a fast-paced action hack and slash title, the most important aspect are those frame rates. And here it's 60 FPS locked out at almost all times. While each of the floors as you move up through the tower have a slightly different aesthetic, the textures in the background and the general layout of the maps aren't the best. There are a few standout moments like the underwater sections or the fire areas, but generally they're just okay. I do quite like the character models, which stand in stark contrast to those backgrounds, and as you'd expect, the hand-drawn characters look good, if a little cliche. Audio, sound effects and music then, well, overall they're pretty good. There's quite a bit of repetition in the lower dungeons, but thankfully, as you progress through each area, the soundtrack shifts appropriately. I was really pleased by this, as I'd heard that first song a few too many times and was very thankful to begin my ascension. As you'd expect, the game performs and sounds just as good in handheld mode and is fully Switch Lite compatible, and there are a good number of different enemies to chop your way through. Although it looks a little dated at times, the performance certainly raises the visual score. Visuals and performance score 15 out of 20 and the audio scores 15 out of 20. As of today, the game has a 20% pre-release discount, taking it down to £14.39, and its default price, or its RRP, is £17.99, with 3 playable characters, each with their own skills and powers, 4 game modes, the story, time attack, arena mode and speedrun, a few little quality of life options like being able to increase the amount of blood on screen, and overall just a really solid hack and slash title, I think this is excellent value. It comes with quite a small download size of 2.4 gigs, and realistically you could spend anywhere between 30 to 50 hours doing all of those story arcs and then playing through on the time attack and other modes, essentially ad infinitum. If £14 was the default price, then value would score really highly, but at £18 I still think it's decent, and I give value 17 out of 20. Ys Origin is a classic hack and slash title in a world that most of us love, with characters who are actually quite engaging. It's cheaply priced and won't fill your entire SD card. It scores a SwitchUp score of 79%. Let me know down in the comments, are you going to be picking this game up? Is it one that interests you, or does the more repetitive nature of these titles put you off? A big thanks to our new patrons, another 3 in the last couple of days. That's absolutely amazing. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!